So it's about 2:30 on Saturday. I got the roof back right after work on Friday, and what we've been doing is basically just kind of going through first and setting all the bolts and nuts and everything in. Just setting them in and not tightening them yet. We've just started to tighten them, just because everything on this is kind of a get everything to fit and then begin tightening process, I would have to say. In doing that, it gives you a heck of a lot less grief than over tightening it first. So it's almost like, I don't know, I've kind of been going around the top, kind of like lug nuts on a wheel, best way I would equate that. We got the roof back and the roof is painted. We wanted to get it done first because he did do the ribbing on the inside, and it's easy for him to mask that off now when he takes the rest of the body. These door frames are new, and so I have to get all these new solid rivets bucked in. And so obviously what we've got to do before I can do that is get and see that my line is nice and clean before I go ahead and set this panel down here, which is just pre-floated. Gives me a nice good curve for that side. Got a little bit of an awkward on the front door right here, and I think that's just because I don't have anything on the bulkhead bolted to the bulkhead stays yet. And of course these hinges could be tweaked if I need to. An interesting side note that I found is that there's apparently a little bit more of a gap than what I expected. This is the newer, 110 door frames, which do fit the 109, and what it basically boils down to is that these ears, we can see that these ears turn up with a wider radius rather than just flipping right over like the original did. So everything's lining up. I'll just be kind of curious how that ends up. But anyway, this is how pretty everything's coming back together. As I mentioned, everything's going to go to paint on Monday morning. At that point, we'll disassemble the bulkhead and everything up front so that you can paint the bulkhead separately, since it is bare metal still, and then he'll go through and paint everything else. Everything's coming together pretty nicely. This Rover has a canvas top. There's something different too in this 109, is that the previous owner had, I don't know at what year, cut in this kind of homemade, but it's very nice, nicely done, opening, and then I have a canvas top that sits over that, so I can roll the canvas forward and then be able to, I guess, go on a safari in Colorado. But ultimately I think what I'll end up doing is fabricating a project where I make a piece that sits down in and then allows me to clamp it on the sides from the inside, so that when I park at the airport or something like that, I get a little bit more security. But anyway, kind of a unique little setup. Okay, so we're getting everything ready for paint today, and as we've mentioned a couple of times, so we're just starting to strip off the pieces that'll be going independent. The bulkhead will be going independent. The hood and everything, of course, up front, and the rest of the body from the door frames back will be attached. We'll take all the doors off and just get everything final prepped done. We'll talk a little bit about the room that we have here with respect to where the radiator needs to go. That we're dealing with here is right on, I would say 4.5 is super tight. Now, what that means is that the radiator needs to probably be in the 3-inch family. It's just going to sit here. Now, you think, well, what about the fan? Well, I can offset the fan to where the fan can have a little bit of extra room. Like the fan could come back into, this area, perhaps, if we offset it. But see if I can keep my aim going here. But I mean, the absolutes are 4.5. The distance over to the water box, to the power steering box is 27, coming straight down on that dimension. And then of course our height, if we're talking about our maximums on the height, if it's going to sit basically in roughly this position here, and we want to be kind of in that 18-inch range, I think, to be safe as well. So we're going 27 wide, 18 tall, and the most room that I have, I'm going to say safely, is 4 inches. With respect to hose connections, what do we got here? Like hose and hose there as well. So that's our basic layout. We've got to be for lines, hoses, etc. And I guess this gives a pretty good example of when I talked about where the power string box needed to go. I mean, this is your absolute positioning right here. So you see what we were talking about there. All right, so just kind of getting along in the afternoon on Sunday. Basically, my wife and I took time to find some actual proper solid round head rivets, and she bucked from the back side while I air hammered from the front side. This door looks a little tight, but the whole thing can move forward about a quarter of an inch, and that's going to free up that seam, and that's going to just fit really nicely there. You can see I got the height up where I like it, and that's working pretty nicely. First chance we get a chance to kind of see how the tunnel is going to look with the new transmission. I am fabricating it pretty much right now with rivets so that I can get it over to paint, get this to the version that we go live with, and then when I do a disc brake conversion in the spring, I will take this the entire tunnel out and floor it and everything and get that fabricated nicely. You can see a little bit of the age of this thing. Had some worn holes that need to be taken care of too, but we wouldn't want to get everything done all at once. So anyway, we're going to do that project like, as I say, when the truck comes back offline in the springtime. And what I have to do basically is still come in, and you can see the ear that's actually attached to the seat box, these little ears right here. When we cut, this ear got cut off, so I'm going to go in and I'll move the floor, move the tunnel next, and actually fabricate the ear that's going to come in that this will sit on. That'll take care of this gap. And then I'm going to make one ear, I can mark with a Sharpie where this is hitting, and then we'll be able to weld on an ear here, which will also take up this gap. We really tried hard. We wanted the tunnel to kind of retain the original side look that the first tunnel had, where the four-wheel drive engagement lock and everything would look the same, but really just this tunnel coming up the side here was really where you ended up doing. I see most of them look like this. I wanted to avoid it, but there really is a necessity. And so this gives me the clearance that I need to allow for the arm action to function, so I won't be hitting the floor when the four-wheel drive is engaged up and down on its post that has the spring on it and everything. So I took the bars out, or sorry, the posts out for right now, just to make this easy to fit in, easy to go to paint. Then once we get everything back, I can then kind of very carefully look at where the shift levers are going to go, and at that point in time I can make my cut. So I'm pretty comfortable with that's how we're going to send it over and just get everything cut for him. Well, so we got the one, what I'm going to call a set of ears in, so that the gap's gone here. So now you got a nice little seam here all the way around. The only thing that I haven't done in the front is up in here, and I think that's just a little frustrating area for me right now, that I may do that as a piece of trim, decorative metal or something after, because I've just got a funny gap, the entire distance, and I want to make sure that everything sets up to the bulkhead fine when it's done. So I've got a problem here just by the cut that I have with the piece that I had, but it's just kind of weird across the top anyway. Then when I meet up to the original side on the driver's side that I did keep, that side had its fair share of character anyway, so I kind of feel like if I did a 1.5 inch strip, maybe even taper maybe a 2-inch strip for like 1.5, and that would allow me to come across and then come down. I just think that would take care of the whole thing really nicely. Anyway, so that's kind of where we're at for the final stage, getting ready for everything to go to paint. I'm going to send it to the painter like this so he can see how everything goes, but then he may go ahead and want to take those pieces off independent, as you might imagine. But anyway, this is how it's going to load up tomorrow. Ultimately, we ended up with, basically there's 3 solid rivets that are really hard to get into position. This one's actually just floating. And then these 2 we're just going to do with a pop rivet 3/16 and then fill the head so that they look as close to rounded as possible. But there's just really no way to buck that side. And same thing here, and this is just kind of squirrely, so I might buck it, or I might just go ahead, since I've already doing the other 2, and just regular pop rivet there. But anyway, it's kind of finally at that phase. Bulkhead, windshield, truck full of parts, POR 15, finally settling up the last 2 doors that I did. You can see right in here where there was some rust. That's going to be a nice little prime surface.